The courthouse doors blasted open as Adrian Cole stormed out, shoving past reporters who swarmed him like vultures sensing blood. Cameras flashed in rapid, blinding bursts. Someone shouted, "Mr. Cole, is it true a woman is suing your company for $30 million?" Another yelled, "Are you settling or fighting?" Adrian didn't break stride. His jaw was clenched, his eyes flaring with a fury that sent bodyguards scrambling to form a wall around him. Inside the building, Maya Rivers flinched at the noise. She gripped the stack of case documents to her chest, her fingers shaking. She wasn't used to chaos, not like this. She was a school counselor, not someone built for lawsuits, cameras, or billionaires. But she had no choice anymore. The company Adrian Cole owned had refused to take responsibility for what happened to her brother. And if no one else would stand up for Evan, she would. She stepped out a quieter side door, hoping to avoid attention, but fate wasn't interested in giving her peace. Adrian's furious gaze swept the perimeter and landed right on her. Their eyes met, hers, terrified but resolute. His, cold, hard, calculating. She froze. He didn't. Adrian took one step toward her as if ready to unleash hell, but a reporter shoved a microphone in his path, blocking him. His moment to intimidate her disappeared, swallowed by the screams of the crowd. Maya clutched her bag and ran down the steps before he could get close. She didn't want a confrontation, not yet, and certainly not in front of cameras. She ducked into a waiting rideshare, exhaling shakily as the door slammed shut. Inside his SUV, Adrian ripped off his tie. "Find out everything about her," he snapped at his assistant. "Everything, where she lives, where she works, who she thinks she is." His assistant nodded nervously. "Yes, sir." Adrian turned his head toward the window and watched her car disappear into traffic. A woman like her challenging a man like him. He didn't know whether to be outraged or impressed. Back at her tiny apartment, Maya dropped the documents onto her bed and collapsed beside them. Her heart still raced from the courthouse. She whispered softly to herself, "I'm doing this for Evan, not for me, for Evan." The lawsuit wasn't about money. People assumed it was, because people like Adrian Cole only understood life through dollar signs. But for Maya, it was justice. Evan had been a warehouse worker for Cole Dynamics. He had trusted them. He gave everything to that job. And a single preventable accident had put him in a wheelchair, fighting nerve damage, fighting medical debt, fighting to keep hope alive. And the billion-dollar company brushed him aside like trash. Maya wiped her eyes. "I will not let him get away with this." While she tried to calm down across the city, Adrian was in a boardroom, pacing like a caged predator. His executives watched him anxiously. "This lawsuit is a parasite," he growled, "and parasites get removed." The head of legal cleared his throat. "Her attorney is inexperienced. She's vulnerable. If we push hard enough, she'll drop it." Adrian stopped pacing. "Push harder. I want her buried in paperwork. I want her exhausted, overwhelmed, outmatched." "Yes, Mr. Cole." But when everyone left, Adrian remained still. He replayed that moment on the courthouse steps. The defiance in her eyes. No fear, no apology. Most people trembled in his presence, but she didn't. It bothered him more than it should. The next morning, Maya rushed between her two jobs, the elementary school where she counseled kids during the day, and the small cafe where she worked evenings for extra income. She hated that she needed it, but Evan's medical bills were piling up. By the time her shift started at 6 p.m., she was exhausted. The cafe was dimly lit, cozy, and smelled of roasted coffee beans. Exactly the kind of place where people came to relax, to escape their problems. But tonight, Maya couldn't escape anything. Her manager whispered, "You okay? You look drained." "I'm fine, just tired." A few minutes later, the bell over the door rang. A tall man in a dark coat walked in, his expression unreadable beneath the shadows. His presence felt commanding, intense. Maya straightened automatically. Something about him unsettled her, though she didn't yet know why. Adrian had entered the cafe, but not as himself, not as the billionaire she'd seen in court. He dressed casually, wore a plain black cap, and kept his head slightly down. He didn't want to be recognized. He just wanted to see her when she wasn't fighting him. When Maya approached with a polite smile, he felt something tighten in his chest. "What can I get for you?" she asked. Her voice was softer than he expected. Not frail, just warm, human, something he wasn't used to encountering in his world of sharks and suits. "Black coffee," he said. "No sugar." "Rough day," she offered gently. He almost laughed. She has no idea. "Something like that." As she prepared his drink, Adrian studied her. The way she moved quickly but carefully, how she apologized to a customer for the wait, how she held herself together even though he could see tension beneath her polite smile. This was not the greedy gold digger his legal team described. She didn't look like someone chasing millions. She looked like someone carrying the weight of the world. When she returned with his coffee, he said, "Can I ask something?" She shrugged. "Depends what it is." "Why did you file the lawsuit yourself? Most people would have withdrawn by now." Her hands froze. She looked directly at him, into him. "Most people don't have a brother who can't walk because someone cut corners." The raw pain in her voice struck him like a blade. I'm sorry to hear that," he said quietly. She frowned. "You sound like you mean it." He didn't know what to say. He shouldn't care. He shouldn't be here. But something about her honesty disarmed him completely. "Some things," he murmured, "shouldn't happen to good people." Maya's expression softened despite herself. "I wish the people responsible felt that way." He swallowed hard, guilt crawling under his skin. Before he could respond, another customer called her, and she moved away. But Adrian remained there, staring into his untouched coffee, feeling a strange, unfamiliar heaviness in his chest. When he finally left, she watched him go, a strange unease pricking her gut. She didn't know why, but something about him felt important, like he wasn't just another customer, like there was a story behind his eyes. The next day, Adrian couldn't focus on work. During a meeting, one of his executives droned on about quarterly projections, but Adrian's mind wandered. To Maya, to her voice, to the sadness she tried so hard to hide. "Mr. Cole, Mr. Cole." He blinked. "What?" The CFO exchanged glances with others. "You seem distracted." "I'm fine." But he wasn't. Later that night, he went back to the cafe. Maya noticed instantly. "Back again?" He shrugged lightly. "Coffee's decent." "You didn't drink it yesterday." He froze. "You noticed?" She handed him today's cup. "I notice everything. Occupational hazard." Adrian couldn't help the faint smile tugging at his lips. The woman was sharper than she looked. They talked again, this time longer. He asked about Evan, and Maya opened up more freely than she expected. She talked about the accident, the medical costs, the company's refusal to help. Adrian listened with clenched fists beneath the table. "Your brother worked hard for them," she said. "He believed they cared. Turns out he was wrong." Every word stabbed him deeper. When he left that night, he sat inside his car for 15 minutes, staring at the steering wheel, breathing unevenly. None of this made sense. He'd met countless women, socialites, models, executives, yet none left him like this. None left him questioning himself. Maya Rivers, the woman suing him, was becoming his obsession. The next morning, his head of legal entered his office with a smug smile. "Good news, we've found a loophole. If we push aggressively for a motion to dismiss, we can crush her case entirely." Adrian stiffened. "Crush it?" "Yes, with enough pressure, she'll break. Her finances can't withstand another extended hearing." Silence. Then Adrian said coldly, "Leave the file." "Sir?" I said leave it. The lawyer hesitated, confused, but he obeyed. When the door closed, Adrian picked up the file and stared at Maya's name on the front. His stomach knotted. He opened it and saw everything they planned to use against her. Loopholes, technicalities, intimidation tactics. He slammed it shut. What kind of monster had he become that this felt wrong? Hours later, he found himself driving again to the cafe. He told himself he needed clarity, that seeing her would help him understand why he felt conflicted. But deep down, he knew the truth. He wanted to see her, only her. This time when she approached, she wore a tired smile. "Long day? You have no idea," he murmured. She sat the cup in front of him. "Well, you can talk about it if you want. Sometimes strangers are easier to open up to." He exhaled shakily. "You might be right." She sat across from him for a moment, just a moment, because the cafe was nearly empty. "So what's your story?" He stared at her. The question cut through all his defenses. No one asked him that. People only cared about what he had, not who he was. His voice broke slightly. "I made choices I thought were right. Turns out, maybe they weren't." "Then make new choices," she said gently. He stared at her, breath caught in his chest. "It isn't that easy." "It is," she whispered, "if you care enough." That sentence hit him so hard he looked away. Their connection deepened over the next several days. Adrian found excuses to return. Maya found herself looking forward to seeing him. She didn't understand why. He made her feel seen in a way she hadn't felt in years, but secrets don't stay hidden. One evening, while cleaning cups, Maya heard the cafe TV click on with breaking news. The newscaster announced, "Cole Dynamics faces increased pressure this week as its CEO, Adrian Cole, continues to battle a lawsuit filed by Maya Rivers." She froze. Her heart thundered. The camera zoomed in on Adrian's face. The man she'd been talking to. The man she'd been opening up to. The man sitting in her cafe almost every night. He was Adrian Cole, the billionaire who ruined her brother's life. A mug slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. Adrian, sitting at his usual table, looked up sharply at the noise, just in time to see Maya staring at the screen, her face draining of all colour. He stood slowly. "Maya!" She backed away as if he were venom. You're him!" "Maya, wait!" "You sat here," she snapped, voice trembling with devastation. "You listened to me. You let me talk about my brother, about the lawsuit, while hiding who you are?" He stepped closer. "I never meant to hurt you." "You already did," she whispered. He reached for her arm. She recoiled. She stared at him with trembling fury, betrayal flashing across her eyes like lightning. "You lied to me," she whispered, backing up until her spine hit the counter. "Adrian Cole, the man who tried to crush my lawsuit, sat in front of me pretending to care." Adrian's voice cracked. "I didn't pretend." "You pretended every second you breathed in this place," she snapped. "Do you know what it feels like to pour your heart out to someone who caused all the pain you're fighting against?" Her voice broke. That shattered him more than her anger. "Maya, listen to me," he pleaded, hands raised as if surrendering. "I didn't come here to spy on you." "Then why?" Tears welled. "Why did you show up night after night? Why did you ask about my brother? Why did you let me trust you?" He swallowed hard. "Because I wanted to understand." "Understand what?" she snapped. "What it feels like to manipulate someone to their face." Adrian's eyes darkened with guilt. "Understand the truth my own company hid from me." Maya froze, not expecting that. "What are you talking about?" she whispered. Adrian looked around the cafe. It was empty except for them, silent, suffocating, heavy with betrayal. He stepped closer. "I started investigating your brother's case. My executives hid things from me, safety reports, emails, maintenance logs. They knew the warehouse was unsafe." Maya's breath caught, but she refused to soften. You expect me to believe that? Believe what you want, Adrian said quietly. But I'm telling you the truth. Your brother didn't suffer because of a freak accident. He suffered because people working under me cut corners and tried to cover it up. Maya's chest tightened with a mixture of hope, anger, and disbelief. Ridiculous, impossible. But his eyes, they weren't the eyes of a man lying. Before she could respond, her phone buzzed. Evan's name flashed on the screen. She answered shakily. Hey, Evan, are you okay? But Evan wasn't okay. His voice was strained. Maya, the hospital just called. I need to go in tonight. Something's wrong with my legs. I think it's the nerves again. Her heart plummeted. I'm coming now. She grabbed her bag and rushed for the door. Adrian stepped forward. I'll drive you. She spun around sharply. You've done enough. Then she fled into the night. Adrian stood frozen, breath ripped out of him. The woman he wanted to protect more than anything had just run away from him like he was poison. He slammed both hands against the table in frustration, then stormed out of the cafe and into his car. But instead of driving home, he drove straight to the Cole Dynamics headquarters. By the time he barged into the executive floor, rage surged through him like fire. His COO flinched. Adrian, it's past midnight. Adrian threw printed emails across the desk. Explain this. The man paled. Where did you get these? Explain it. The COO stammered. We didn't want to worry you. You were dealing with the investor scandal at the time, and so you hid a safety violation that left a man partially paralyzed. Adrian's voice trembled. You lied to me to protect your bonuses. The man said nothing. Adrian grabbed him by the collar and slammed him into the wall. You destroyed a man's life and then tried to bury the woman fighting to help him. The COO choked. Security! Adrian dropped him. Get out of my building. You're fired. Fired? Adrian, we have procedures. I am the procedure, Adrian growled. Leave before I have you removed. The COO gathered his things and fled. But the fury inside Adrian didn't leave with him. Back in the parking lot, he slammed his fist into his steering wheel. He wanted to go to the hospital. He wanted to help Maya. He wanted to face her brother and apologize. But she'd never let him near her right now. He drove anyway. At the hospital entrance, he spotted Maya pacing in the dimly lit hallway outside Evan's room. She was hugging herself, shaking with fear. He stayed hidden around the corner, unable to approach. He watched the worry etched across her face, watched as she talked to a nurse, watched as she fought tears when they wheeled Evan for tests. He wanted to comfort her more than he wanted air. A doctor returned after a long while. His nerve inflammation is severe but manageable. He needs rest and adjustments to his medication. Maya exhaled shakily, collapsing into a chair. Adrian stepped back into the shadows. He didn't belong here, not yet. He turned and walked away. The next morning, Maya woke to the sound of her lawyer calling her repeatedly. She answered groggily. What now? You need to come to the office immediately. Why? What happened? The lawyer's voice trembled. Cole Dynamics sent over new documents. Maya bolted upright. What kind of documents? The kind that prove your case. Her breath stopped. At the law office, she stood frozen as her lawyer laid out folders, emails, maintenance logs, everything Adrian told her last night. This is internal evidence, the lawyer whispered. Someone high up released it. Maya didn't need to guess who, but the shock quickly morphed into anger. He had this information and still kept his identity hidden from her while listening to her talk about her pain, her trust, her life. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number, can we talk? A C, she deleted the message. Across town, Adrian stared at his phone, jaw tight. She wasn't responding. He deserved that. He deserved worse. But he wouldn't let things end like this. Meanwhile, his board of directors summoned him urgently. When he entered the conference room, 12 grim faces stared back at him. The chairman spoke coldly. Adrian, explain why confidential company documents were turned over to the plaintiff in an active lawsuit. Adrian didn't blink. Because it was the truth. You just jeopardized this company, the CFO snapped. You think investors will support a CEO who sides with someone suing us? Adrian's temper flared. A man was paralyzed because of our negligence. We hid it. You hid it by breaking protocol, the CFO shot back. No, Adrian said calmly. I exposed what you hid. Gasps. The chairman's eyes narrowed. We are voting to suspend your authority pending an internal review. Adrian froze. You're staging a coup. We are protecting the company. You're acting emotionally. Emotionally. A word nobody had ever dared use against him. He laughed once, a hollow, bitter sound. If doing the right thing is emotional, then yes. It's done, the chairman said. Security will escort you out. Security approached. Adrian didn't fight. He walked out with his head high, but inside, a hurricane ripped him apart. He had lost everything, his position, his authority, the company he built from the ground up, because of one woman. One woman he couldn't stop thinking about. 2 hours later, Maya was sitting by Evan's hospital bed when a nurse brought her an envelope. No sender, the nurse said. Inside was a handwritten letter. Maya, I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that I'm fighting. For the truth, for your brother, for what should have been done years ago. Do whatever you must in court. I won't stand in your way. Adrian! The paper trembled in her hands. He didn't ask her to understand. He didn't justify himself. He just surrendered. She hated how that affected her. Later that evening, while stepping outside for air, she found him standing near the parking lot, leaning against a lamppost like a man who'd lost everything but was still trying to hold on. He looked up slowly when she approached. Her voice was ice. What are you doing here? His voice was barely audible. I needed to see you. Why? She demanded. So you can pretend to care again? No, he whispered, so I can apologize. She scoffed. Apologize? You think one apology fixes everything? My brother lost his future. I lost years of my life fighting a company too powerful to touch. I know, Adrian said, pain coloring every word. I know, Maya. And I lost my company today because I chose to do what was right. She hesitated. What do you mean? They voted me out, he said quietly, for giving you the evidence. Shock rippled through her. You lost everything because of me. Not because of you, he corrected, because of them, the people who cared more about profit than human lives. Something in her shifted, just slightly, but she wasn't ready to trust him. She stepped back. This doesn't change what you hid from me. You deceived me every time you walked into that café. And with that, she turned away. Adrian watched her walk back inside, his chest hollow, his hands trembling, not with anger, but with the crushing realization that he might have finally discovered something worth fighting for, and already lost it.
Adrian watched the cafe door close behind her and felt a piece of himself fall away, soundless. He stayed where he was until the lights went dim and the last patron left. When he finally walked out into the cold night, the city felt less like an empire and more like a maze he could no longer navigate. Days blurred into hearings. News cycles devoured every scrap of scandal. The board's coup left Adrian publicly weakened. Pundits circled. Investors whispered about his instability. Yet the documents he'd released were flame. They spread through the court and the press and stripped the company's defenses bare. Internal emails showed maintenance requests that were ignored. Safety audits annotated and shelved. An executive's signature appeared on a falsified report. Each revelation tightened the knot of outrage that even shareholders couldn't ignore. Maya watched it all with a complicated hunger. Part of her felt vindication, proof that she hadn't been a madwoman, that Evan hadn't been an embarrassment to be hidden away. Another part of her was hollow because the man she'd risked trusting was the one who'd kept that information from her. The letter had been a lifeline, but it hadn't mended the deceit. At the courthouse, the judge presiding over the negligence case moved with a rare, deliberate compassion. "This is not simply about money," the judge said in open court. "It is about accountability." Adrian sat in the gallery during much of the proceedings. He wanted to stand, face trial, swallow the humiliation, but the lawyers insisted he remain seated. He listened to the testimony: workers who'd been ignored, engineers who'd warned management and been silenced, doctors who explained Evan's prognosis. He heard Evan's own voice through the testimony, soft, shaky, but full of anger that steered clear of pity. Maya took the stand and delivered a shock of raw truth. She spoke about nights at Evan's bedside, the way his smile had dulled, the medical equipment that hummed like a cruel metronome. Her voice shook, but she did not break. "I filed because he needs help," she said simply. "Not because I want millions. Because he needs the dignity to know his pain mattered." Outside, the cameras circled, hungry for a headline. Inside, Adrian knelt in private in a small, empty prayer room the company had carved out years earlier for employee wellness, a place he had never once used. He thought about the first time he'd built a small device in his father's garage and how proud he'd been to create something that worked. He'd wanted to build things that mattered, until the hunger for growth swallowed the purpose. His reinstatement stayed off the table as the board bickered, but that didn't matter. What mattered now was that he had to see the truth through. He would not reassert power to silence people. He would use power to fix what had been broken. On a rainy afternoon, Adrian requested in writing to be called as a witness. He wanted to speak not as a CEO, but as a man whose negligence, whether direct or indirect, had allowed harm. The courtroom murmured when his name was called. Cameras reframed, and for once he didn't flinch. He walked to the stand with an old steadiness he had buried years earlier, hands bare, suit unbuttoned, hair slightly askew from sleepless nights. Under oath, he told the court everything. He described the culture of silence he'd allowed, the bonuses tied to project timelines that encouraged shortcuts, the emails he'd ignored during busy quarters. He spoke of the moment he saw the maintenance logs and realized how complicit the company's management had been. "This is not a defense," he said at one point, voice raw. "This is my confession. I did not know everything I should have known. I did not ask the right questions. And for that, a man suffers." When he named names, the murmurs became a roar. The prosecution used his testimony to anchor the case, not a conspiracy theory, but documented, deliberate negligence. It was the sort of public unraveling that could end careers and topple empires. The CEO's resignation began to be spoken about openly. Shareholders called for structural reform, class action suits multiplied. The pressure was enormous, and he welcomed it because it meant accountability. Maya watched Adrian speak and felt the ground shift beneath her. His candor had weight in a way scripted apologies never would. But she could not forget that he had listened under a false pretense. She had told him about Evan in confidence, had let him into nights of worry and grief, and he had sat there all the while a puppet master of the corporate machine that caused the suffering. The betrayal burned. After the judge ordered a substantial settlement and a mandatory overhaul of coal dynamics safety protocols, there was a legal resolution. Evan would get the care he needed, and funds would be set for worker safety improvements. The board began to fracture, CEOs were removed, compliance officers were hired. The public hailed the case as a watershed moment in corporate accountability. Adrian walked out of the courthouse to jeers and applause, the sound of both like rain on metal. He went to the hospital where Evan stayed and sat by that bed until dawn. He listened to the whirs of machines, held Evan's thin hand, and said the things no one had said in months. Evan's eyes met his with a complex mixture of resentment, relief, and fatigue. "He's going to be okay?" Maya asked when she finally came in, face pale from endless nights. Adrian looked up. "He is going to get the best care we can give." "You didn't even tell me who you were," Maya said. "You stayed and listened while hiding behind a lie." Adrian did not try to deny it. He only lowered his gaze. "I know. All I can do is accept the consequence of that." Maya's shoulders dropped, exhausted. It's going to take time, she said. Trust isn't something you patch overnight. I know. He swallowed. I'd rather lose everything than watch another person be ignored. That's not a bargain I can refuse anymore. The company announced a public apology and a comprehensive plan, replacement of aging equipment, third-party safety audits, and a fund for injured workers. Adrian had offered the initial framework and then stepped aside to let independent overseers implement the safeguards. He also arranged for a scholarship fund in Evan's name for workers' families, a gesture that pleased the public and outraged cynics who called it performative. But not everything was performative. Adrian sat at his desk one evening, alone, and wrote a long letter, unwieldy and honest, addressed to Maya. He left it with the receptionist and asked for it to be given to her personally. The letter did not ask for forgiveness. It asked only for understanding that his change was not a publicity stunt. He gave up the corner office to those who would build the company up the right way and took a smaller role as chair emeritus with no day-to-day power. It stung, but the emptiness he felt had lessened. Months later, Evan began to make small steps toward recovery. Physical therapy became part of the routine, and for the first time in a long time, Maya saw a sliver of the boy who'd loved soccer and pranks. Not all damage would disappear, something scarred. But they were learning to navigate a new reality. The public drama settled into a steady hum. Mason jars of opposing opinion still clacked online, but the core change had happened. The company reoriented, lives were compensated, and a culture of safety replaced a culture of deadlines at all costs. One late afternoon, with the sky a bruised purple, Maya found Adrian in a small community center reading room where a local support group met. He had volunteered after stepping back from the corporate cauldron, small acts that quietly mattered. He looked up when she entered, surprise flickering across his face like sunlight through leaves. "Can I sit?" he asked, almost painfully polite. She nodded. "I suppose." She took the seat opposite him, hands folded. There was a silence between them that held years. She watched him, the lines around his eyes had softened, the edge that had once cut through people had dulled. He had lost empire-sized arrogance and carried instead a quietness that made space for others. "I'm not here to ask you anything," he said. "I know I hurt you." "You did," she replied. "You lied, Adrian. That's the part one can't gloss over. You used my vulnerability." He nodded, shame washing over his face. "I was afraid. Afraid I'd be complicit if I asked. Afraid I would lose control if I admitted there were failings under my roof. So I lied instead of acting. Cowardice. Not courage." Maya's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile if she'd wanted it to be. "That's an uncommon admission for a man in your world." "Maybe." He shifted forward. "But I want to be better. Not because I lost my job or because the press made me, because I don't want to wake up and realize I built a fortune that ruined people." She studied him. The vulnerability wasn't theatrical. It wasn't a performance to win her back. It was a collapsed man, trying to mend himself with pieces he had no skill assembling. "Do you think you can earn trust back?" she asked bluntly. "I don't know." He sounded honest. "I can only keep showing up and doing the work. If you want distance, I'll respect it. If you want justice, I'll make sure it's carried out. If you want nothing to do with me, I'll accept it." She looked at him for a long time and then, unexpectedly, she reached out and placed one hand over his, just once, a small human contact that was not an answer but an acknowledgement. "Time will tell," she said softly. They began, slowly, to share small moments, community events where Adrian helped install new safety fixtures, hospital visits where he sat quietly, listening. He never again tried to charm her. He simply did the small, uncomfortable things he had once delegated to others. He learned to listen without solving, to accept pain without attempting to erase it. There was no sudden happily ever after, no cinematic montage of roses and declarations. Instead, there were practicalities, Evan's therapy appointments, the meetings to implement worker protections, Maya's occasional angry calls when a contractor cut corners. There were also small, unexpected kindnesses, Adrian showing up at school fundraisers not as a donor, but as a volunteer, fixing broken cafeteria equipment himself with a patience he once reserved for boardroom calculations. Months later, standing on a small rooftop garden that overlooked a city that had once symbolized only conquest to him, Adrian and Maya watched children chase each other through the breeze. The skyline was a softer thing now, no longer a symbol of his unassailable dominance, but of a city that housed real lives. "You did a lot of damage," Maya said, voice steady. "So did my company," Adrian answered. "But I'm trying to make amends." She looked at him. The edge in her gaze had softened to a cautious warmth. "That's visible," she admitted. "But visible doesn't mean forgiven." He smiled faintly. "I don't expect it to. I expect work." They watched a child trip and a stranger run forward to help. It was a small loop. Someone falls, someone helps, life goes on. In that simplicity, they found a sliver of hope. As the sun dipped, Adrian turned to her. "If nothing else, I want you to know I'll keep fighting. Not for my name, but for people like Evan. If you ever want us to do this together, work on safety, on care, I would be honored." Maya considered him, and then nodded once, decisive. "We'll do it together. On purpose." He let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding for months. It wasn't a promise of forever. It was a promise of effort. For both of them, that was enough for now. If this story moved you, if you believe powerful people can change when held accountable, then please like this video, leave a comment sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to Timeless Tale Studio